Hello, can everyone hear me? Okay, so I know it's been a very long day, but if you smile, it will help us a lot. Yeah, okay, right. Um, my name is Joshua Olufemi. I'm a data journalist. I also publish a data journalism platform in Nigeria called Dataphyte. But this session is not about me. It's about great stories, great newsrooms that have won, the 2024 Sigma Award, and I believe that that's why you're here. And we're gonna go straight into it. So you're welcome. I'm just gonna put us through how this will roll. It's more of a showcase so that we're able to learn and we're also able to share what the newsrooms here went through, and then we take your questions, and then they give us their final thoughts on how we can keep doing great work using data, using frontier technologies, using even open source intelligence, sort of information to drive the work. The two great guys here, I'll be in and out talking about the third story that won an award, a Nigerian story by Humangu, which is similar in terms of the tools and the technologies that were used, but more importantly, Naveena and Chin-Hsuan, sorry, I'll keep murdering the name, pardon me, we'll do a presentation and we'll take it forward. But as we go into it, I'll probably provide a little bit of context to the two stories and why, the Sigma Award jury thought they were compelling enough to win the award, of great data journalism work. First thing that important to know, if you take it from the Grist, which is Naveena's newsroom, and is how you're able to see beyond what is available to the high, how you're able to go down, pay more attention to more than what the open source information or public data is showing, and you're able to unearth what every, business or corporate would like hidden. And then you go to one that I imagine both from a media landscape context to the type of data that you're dealing with. You would have from the reporter from Taiwan, which is Chin-Hsuan, how you would take security data or military data and you're able to use that to also showcase to the world an important conversation that is going on. It's like a silent war going on in Asia, and how that is telling a lot of, helping us to better understand and begin some advocacy around how, global powers are using their own interests, political, socio-economic, to affect everyday lives. The third one, which is the Nigerian one, is really taking the time to look at a situation that's been around for over a decade and zooming down using geospatial, intelligence data to showcase that. Without saying too much, I'm going to hand it over now to Naveena to kind of tell us. But I really want, as you present your PowerPoint, to start by explaining why the story.
Sure, yeah. Hi, everyone. Yes? Now? Yeah, okay, great. Thank you for that question, Joshua. So this story really came about because in 2022, I was talking to a source about petrochemical industry in Texas and the sort of emissions that they were releasing into the atmosphere and the resulting degradation of air quality. And so that's really where the story started, is I was on the phone with this person and they were telling me, at the very tail end of the conversation, after we had talked about a number of different facilities and how the state was policing these facilities are not doing enough, he kind of had his throwaway line at the very end where he said, I heard something about some facility out in Port Arthur that is trying to evade an air quality monitor. And that's all he could say about it. Like, he did not know what the name of the facility was or anything else, but he said, you should call up some advocates in Port Arthur and talk to them. And try to get a better handle on what's going on there. And then as soon as I started beginning to sort of look into it, I realized, there's more here. There's a story here. It had received a little bit of attention in the local newspaper, where there was, very short stories about it. But beyond that, nobody had really dug into what might be happening at this one facility. And so maybe I can, if we can, I can control it. Perfect. And so that led to Any Way the Wind Blows. This was a year-long project that I worked in collaboration with the data journalist on our staff, Clayton Aldern, who couldn't be here, but he was a big part of this project as well. And that one sentence, that one line from the source led to about a year of looking at a facility called Oxbow calcining. Oxbow is, as you can see on the map, it's on the Texas coast. It's a couple hours northeast of Houston. So Houston is typically the facility that, or the city that most people know of as an oil and gas industry hub, but so is Port Arthur. It has a long history. There's an Exxon refinery that's been there for more than 100 years. Lots of massive, giant petrochemical facilities that put out a lot of emissions into the atmosphere, and Oxbow is one of them. This particular company, what it does is it takes bottom of the barrel crude. It takes this thing called coke, C-O-K-E, not the Coca-Cola. And what it does is it heats it up. There's sulfur that's trapped in this coke, and so when you heat it up, it releases as sulfur dioxide, and you get a purer, a stronger version of that coke that you then sell to the aluminum industry, for smelting purposes, for iron, all kinds of products. And so this particular facility was releasing an enormous amount of sulfur dioxide. It was the largest sulfur dioxide emitter in the county, and it was, I think, at the time, maybe the 5th largest in the whole state of Texas. So already regulators kind of had an eye on this facility. And certainly residents in that area of West Port Arthur, which is a historically segregated neighborhood, were aware of this facility. They knew that some of the smells that they were smelling, the kind of yellowish brown plume that they would see coming from this facility, it had something to do with Oxbow, and it probably had something to do with their operations at that facility. So people were sort of already generally aware. And so in 2014, the Federal Environmental Protection Agency set a limit for how much sulfur dioxide could be in the air. And they set it at 75 parts per billion. And that triggered a whole series of events. The state came out and put an air quality monitor right by Oxbow because they wanted to keep an eye on this facility. And specifically, sorry, I don't know why I'm so nervous. This is a story that I've told many times, but yet here we are. So specifically, this particular facility was already on the radar, right? It was already the largest emitter in the county. The state put a monitor out there. They modeled trying to figure out the exact location for this monitor and eventually found a spot for it. And in 2017, this monitor comes online. And what the company does when this monitor comes online is they start changing their operations because this monitor is there to pick up their sulfur dioxide emissions. We don't come to learn about the fact that this company did that for years later, until years later. And that allegation first emerges in a lawsuit that one of the contracting companies files against Oxbow. So Oxbow had a contractor that they were working with. They got into litigation over non-payment issues and a whole host of reasons that are somewhat irrelevant and tangential. But one of the things that emerges in that lawsuit is the fact that the company was changing its operations depending on the direction that the wind blew. So the allegation was when the wind would blow in the direction of this air quality monitor and the monitor could pick up the sulfur dioxide emissions, the company would change its operations so that the monitor wouldn't pick it up essentially and they wouldn't get into trouble with the state. So that was the allegation, and it had been reported on in the local newspapers as kind of this litigation between these two entities. There's a contractor that's filed suit, and here are what the allegations say. And so I began digging into these legal filings. I started looking at, well, is there more to say? I mean, this is such an intriguing story. We suspect sometimes that, some facilities might be engaging in this kind of behavior, but there's hardly ever litigation in these cases. And so when I started looking into the legal filings, I came across a PDF that was more than 5,000 pages long. And it had, this is a screenshot of one page of that PDF. It had this data. For 5,000 pages, there was just all of this data in that PDF. And I started to think, well, is there something here? It doesn't seem like anyone has really taken a hard look at this data. And so the first step was to convert this massive PDF into a spreadsheet, into usable machine-readable data. And as you can see from the screenshot, what it is actually showing you is it is showing you data from the monitor along with meteorological data, so wind direction data, temperature, wind, peak wind gust. So some meteorological information, and then some information on the right-hand side under grouping, which gives you some information about the operations of the facility. And to me, this was really just such a treasure trove because you hardly ever get this kind of insight into how a facility operates. So each of these rows, what it's showing you is the sulfur dioxide levels in 5-minute increments. And then it's also giving you some information about which kilns at the facility were operating, which ones were on, which ones were in hot stack mode, cold stack mode, and whether they were on or off for each of the 4 smokestacks that they had. And that was just such incredibly detailed, rich information at 5-minute intervals for a period of 2.5 years. So you had this real insight into what the company was doing and how it was operating. And so one of the things that I did initially is I put this into a spreadsheet and I tried to look at, all right, when are these kilns off and when are they on, and what direction is the wind blowing in when they're on and off? Is there some kind of anomalous trend here? Because there is this allegation that they're turning off their kilns, they're turning off their operations when the wind blows in the direction of the monitor. And so that was an initial sort of look that I did, just using a quick pivot table, using spreadsheet, you're just using Microsoft Excel. And it indicated that some of the kilns were being turned off when there were southerly winds blowing from the south towards the monitor. And when we started seeing that, then we started trying to build these windrows charts. And this windrows chart, basically what it shows you is the frequency that the wind was blowing in from a certain direction. So the length of the bar is the frequency that the wind is blowing in a certain direction. And then also, you can also see which direction the wind was blowing in as well. So we started putting the data into these windrows charts. Again, longer bars meaning there's more, the likelihood of the wind blowing from a certain direction is higher. And so we took all of this data and we tried to put it into this one particular format of a windrows chart. And you can see when all of the kilns are on, if all 4 of their kilns are on, the data shows that in general, the wind is more likely to come from the southerly direction going to the north. That was already kind of a bias that existed, just the location, just the wind direction in that area. It was more likely that you had southerly winds. And so then we tried to plot the same charts when the kilns were off. So we looked at 3 of the kilns. We looked at kiln 2, 3, and 5. And what you saw emerge was this pattern where it seemed like it was more likely that the wind was blowing from the south to the north when these kilns were off. And it's not a perfect, clearly, you know, there are times when kilns are off when the wind is blowing in another direction. It's not that those cases don't exist because, you know, when you're operating a massive facility, there are multiple reasons why you might shut a kiln down. Maybe there are repairs going on. Maybe you just don't need the capacity, like you're not processing as much coke that day. So maybe that, you know, you're just having to shut down some kilns. But overwhelmingly, we saw this trend of the kilns were off predominantly when the wind was blowing in a certain direction. And so this seemed to, you know, give credence to this idea, this allegation, that in fact, you know, the allegation that we heard from that company in the litigation was that these kilns were being turned off when the wind was moving in a certain direction. And that seemed to be true just based off of these windrows charts that we put together. What happened to kiln 4? Like in the previous one, we only looked at kiln 2, 3, and 5. Kiln 4, when we aggregated the data over those 3 years and we tried to look at, well, what's going on, no clear pattern really emerged. And then as I was reading through the legal filings, I came across a permit request that the company had submitted saying they were increasing the height of their smokestack. And which smokestack did they increase the height of? It was for kiln 4. And the reason they did that, they state in these filings, is for better dispersion, because they knew that they were running into trouble with the state regulators in terms of how much sulfur dioxide they were putting out. And so they had requested that they be allowed to increase the height of their smokestack. And so, you know, I think you can imagine, if you have hotter air rises up to the top of a smokestack, and the higher up your smokestack is, the better dispersion you get. So the concentration, you're putting out the same amount of sulfur dioxide, but the concentration that is being emitted is lower. And so it's less likely that the air quality monitor will pick up those emissions, because one, it's going higher up into the air, it's getting dispersed, it's not being picked up at the same level, at the same rate. And this is all perfectly legal, by the way. So the state regulator stamps that request, and they increase the height by 20 feet, and suddenly they don't have a problem anymore, and they don't have to shut this kiln off every time the wind blows from the south. So you see that difference. In 2017, there is a little bit of a bias from the southerly winds. And then 2018, I think for 3 or 4 months, they had shut the kiln down while they increased the height of the smokestack. And then you look at 2019, and that southerly bias completely vanishes. So, that was what was happening with kiln 4, and it gave us even more evidence that, yes, this company seemed to be manipulating their operations based on the direction of the wind. So the windrose charts gave us a good understanding of what seemed to be happening with each one of these kilns, but we wanted to see if there was any other way that we could use this data to, again, tie those two things together, right? Because correlation is not causation, and these windrose charts seem to show some sort of correlation, and it seems compelling, but we wanted to try and see if we could push that idea even further. And so one of the things we also did is we looked at the 24 hours before and after a kiln is shut down. So we isolated that data for 24 hours before and after a kiln is shut down, and we noticed that sulfur dioxide levels tended to spike after a shutdown. Now, why might that be? Why was it that sulfur dioxide levels seemed to unanimously kind of trend upwards after kiln shutdown? So it seemed like there was some correlation there, again, indicating that the operators were aware of the fact that sulfur dioxide levels were going to spike up. And perhaps that is maybe why they chose to shut down the kilns. And so this was yet another way that we tried to use this data. And I think, to your earlier question of why this story, why did we spend all of this time and these resources to look so closely at all of this data? And it was a couple of different things. One is that, yes, the story had been reported in the local paper, but it had been presented as a he said, she said argument. These two companies are in court, they're litigating, and company A says X and company B says Y, and who knows what the truth is, right? So what we found we could do with this data is we could get a little closer to what might actually be happening. And a lot of the story, if you read the piece, it's centered around the data, but there's also a lot of rich detail that we found from the legal filings. So that was a part of it. And then the other thing was, it seemed like, yes, it had been reported, there was this litigation, but Texas regulators and the federal EPA had not done very much to look into what might be happening here, what seemed like a very obvious case of a Clean Air Act violation. And so when we talked to lawyers about this case and we presented the evidence, they cited specific statutes and seemed to say, oh, well, this is illegal. This should not be happening. You're not supposed to be tampering with a monitor. This was not them physically going and tampering with a monitor, but this was changing their operations to essentially avoid detection. And so those were the two big reasons why we decided that this was a story that merited a year of work and a lot of resources and time. So, yeah.
So in terms of tools or technology that was used for this,
yeah.
So in terms of tools and technology that you sort of used for this,
yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, you're saying it's more of just use of Excel, just visualization?
Primarily,
or what other
yes.
ways? No sensors, nothing?
No, we did not have our own monitoring devices or sensors or anything like that. the first step was converting the 5,100 page PDF into Excel, and so that was through a combination of Tabula, and I believe Clay, my colleague at Grist, also ran a script to pull that data out. So that was sort of step one. Then there was sort of a preliminary kind of analysis just on Excel, which just using pivot tables, nothing too fancy or complicated. And then the windrows charts and the other analysis that you saw, that was really Clay's work, pulling together all of that data to make it easier for people to understand. Because instead of, there was a version of the story we could have done where we had said, X percentage of the time the kilns were shut down when the wind was blowing in this direction, but we chose not to go in that direction, and we used these visuals instead.
Yeah. So I asked the question, essentially, looking at the context of Global South, data journalism experiments, and the kind of thing that you have in my country, where most times when we see this kind of stories from America or other countries, we think a lot of fancy, sophisticated tools have been used. But you've been able to sort of demystify that to say it's more of pouring into the data, finding what is missing, and just using a simple pivot table can really be the way to start to ask the question. Of course, there will be other questions that, warranted this, which is where you started from. So I'm going to come to Chin and ask the same question. Is it the plight of the people, or just the interest in looking at geopolitics of the war? Why the story, and how did you guys go about it?
Okay, so the topic I want to share with you today is about my hometown, Taiwan, and we are monitoring the China's military forces aircraft activity after Nancy Pelosi visits Taiwan in 2022. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Oh, it's not showing up. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Okay, so how we started this story, I think it's because how China is continuously invading Taiwan's air defense zone is it's a long phenomenon for us, so it's never new. But after Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, it suddenly gained a lot of international discussion about this topic. And also in Taiwan, people are too used to these activities every day, because our national defense actually published some of the PLA aircraft activities on its website, and also some newsroom did reports about it, but it's not really a thing that people will look at it every day. So you can feel like the Taiwanese people already get used to it. So we also want to arouse a certain awareness of our people that what is the situation and what is China's purpose now. When it comes to the military things. So today I'm going to share with you is China's war strong to a first island chain topic, and you can have a QR code here linked to the article, but sorry, it's a Chinese article, but you can use Google Translate or ChatGPT to help you read it, yes. So it's okay to get the link. Okay, so first let me introduce my newsroom. We are the Reporter. We are a Taiwan-based nonprofit media, and we are founded by a group of journalists, and now we are growing into 47 members. Half of my members are journalists, and others are designers or engineers, and we are all working on investigative reporting and also data journalism. So as a media based in Taiwan, we have to deal with a lot of China-related issues. So for example, we are the first Taiwanese media covering the Xinjiang re-education camps. And also we have to use a lot of data journalist strategy, because the data in China is all very always very vague, and it's always nearly impossible to get truth in China. So like last year we did this, is a data-driven coverage about how Chinese businessmen is illegally mining sands from Taiwan's water. So in this one, we analyzed the data within the China's judicial system, and then make it into this map, so like people can know like where these sands come from and what they are transmitting to. And so like you can see here, like data journalism is really a way how we break down China's issue. And so back to our topic today, the project I will share with you today is focused on the China's military forces, especially the PLA aircraft activities. They are actually like escalating their activity after Nancy Pelosi visit Taiwan. I think it's like August 2022. And so we analyzed the data from that, and the year followed. So the reason we picked this timeline is not because like we want to indicate that Pelosi visit Taiwan causes China to escalate any situation like this. Actually, we have interviewed a lot of military experts in Taiwan, and they say that China really has its own strategy and timeline on how to suppressing Taiwan's national defense system. So they did this is by conducting a lot of small activities almost every day. So they keep sending out this aircraft to our air defense identification zone and also cross the Taiwan Strait midline. So by buzzing around Taiwan, they are trying to create a new normality that they are going to keep doing this. So when it comes to our national defense, it will make them harder to make a judgment when we should take actions. So our topic is actually we are trying to bring in these aircraft activities on map and showing people that how is the China's goals about it. And after like, and also I think we did this is because like the international society also needs to know about Taiwan's situation and China's actions. And we also did some part is about how the US and the Japan responds to these activities. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how we break down the data. Because we have limited time today, so I'm only going to show about the methodology we break down with the PLA activity using the Taiwan National Defense Ministry's data. So we also did the same thing with the Japan part, but the methodology is similar, but we don't have time for that today. So here is our data source. It's mainly from Taiwan's official national defense website, and they will publish the PLA activities on its website on a daily basis. But as you can see here, like, I don't know if everybody have worked with the military data. It's like, it's impossible that they will give you the data because they want to keep it vague or classified. So the only source we have here is these images in super low resolution. It will document like how the China's aircraft go out and how will they come back. So you can see there's a little red arrow there. That's for one day. They have their aircraft like circulate around the corner of our identification zone. So our goal is that we have a whole year images of these things, and we have to like extract the certain arrow out. So it means the aircraft's path. We need all the paths out, and we want to map it out on our QGIS tool so that we can analyze it. So our main challenge here is how we turn these super low resolution images into real data. So first, of course, we need to get these images. So we use the web scraping tool to download all the images from the website. And then since the image is scanned in different sizes and scale, as you can see here, like some of them even have different title heights, and they are in different sizes. So we think the national defense is actually doing this on purpose, so like nobody can analyze the data. But yes, we have to like standardize all of this data into the same proportion. So here we are using AI, so thanks to ChatGPT, we asked ChatGPT to suggest the best Python code for this. So the code actually helps us to optimize cropping these images into the same size and proportion. So after that, we can get a series of images that is the same proportion like this. And then the third step is that we have to extract the path. So at first, we also asked ChatGPT, hoping that it could do the work for us, but apparently it's too hard and the image resolution is too low. So it's impossible for AI to do such things. But if anyone knows how to do it with an AI, please tell us. Yeah. So anyway, so we have to like seek advice to our the data journalist community in Taiwan. And one of the data journalists told us that maybe they have did the same topic before, and they did it by hand. So we took their advices and we did it by hand. So that is two colleagues and me. We use a tool called Figma. It's like we kind of listed all the images, and then we kind of draw the path, every single path on these images. And then you get a path. So although it's very easy to, it's very convenient using AI, but you still have to do something by hand. So we divided these layers, layer by date, and then we have to draw the path and then record the aircraft types and quantities on this path ID. And then we have to export it as SVG files. And then our data journalists can use these SVG files. They can pull all the data, including the aircraft types, quantities in the path ID, and then make them into CSV, the spreadsheet here, to analyze. And also, we need to know exactly where these paths are on the map. So that means we have to give you the geographical parameters. So here we are using QGIS, georeferencing tool. We're starting by throwing one of the images into QGIS. So we can obtain like the four corners of the bounding box. We can obtain their geographical parameters. And then we ask ChatGPT also, again, to provide a code that they could calculate each path geographical parameters for us. So thanks to AI again. And finally, we have all these data, so the data journalists can analyze them, and we have our designer to he used After Effects to visualize the result, and then we I work with the journalists that we reach out to some experts that to interpret the meaning of the POA's activities. So the conclusion we get here is like actually the first one is POA is you can see on the animated is like it's forming a circle. I think it's just like a circle around Taiwan. They are sending aircraft. It's not like this before. But after 2022, they are starting to forming a circulation around Taiwan. But mostly they are drones. They are not all fighter planes, but they are observation planes or drones. So this means like they are beginning to obtain some certain long-distance drones. They are enhancing their power now, and they are proving improving their techniques. So this is the first alarm. And another one is like our expert told us like by circling Taiwan, they are actually trying to buzzing around different areas. So this will slowly wear down Taiwan's, I think it's slowly wear down Taiwan's manpower and also equipment readiness. So like this is during the peacetime, but who knows like if there's going to war, do we still have the same power or awareness of this kind of situation? Yes, and the third one is that we also found very intense helicopter activities is in the southwestern water of Taiwan. This is related to there's a very intense submarine activities around this place, but it's not just China's submarines, it's also like US or Philippines submarines. Yes, so I think these are our findings. And we also upload our data set on GitHub. So if anyone is interested in this data, you can access here. And also if you want to discuss about the methodology with our data journalists, here is also our contact and our article to our methodology. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah. That was even intense to consume, right?
Sorry.
Right. I guess so that I'll open it to everyone. I'll open this up now. If you have questions, that you want to ask, because if I wanted to take their own comments or my questions for them, we'll probably take all the time. I think we have just like 15 minutes. Okay, I have one hand here. Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you for this inspirational, session. And I agree with you that maybe the manual work should be the base in certain steps, and the AI has its limitations. About using the code and taking the help from the Python or the ChatGPT. How could you verify when you fact-checked this kind of data before publishing? The part that's related to the scraping by codes, what's the way usually you use in order to fact-check that the code get the right images that you want? And this is very challenging. Thank you.
Okay. The place we are using ChatGPT is actually about cropping this image into the same scale. So it's actually not about how to build the data, it's just about cropping these images. If we don't use ChatGPT, we have to crop it with our hands. So I think AI in our newsroom is only used as a tool, like you use Photoshop to crop things, and also now we are using ChatGPT to write code to crop these things. So it's basically not about anything about verification. And also our data journalists will, again, they will check if we really did some code with the data, they will manually check it again and again. I don't think we have ever do that, but we are using ChatGPT only if we want to do something that can originally did by hand, but just you have to repeat it multiple times. But now we can use AI to write a code to solve that. Can that answer your questions?
Any other question? Okay.
Hi, thank you. Really interesting project. I had another question about tools, but this time I was really interested in the use of Figma, which I heard in the previous Sigma Awards talk yesterday, people talking about Figma. I was in a newsroom a couple of years ago, most recently, and felt like Adobe Illustrator was really the tool of choice when working with vector graphics. Do you feel like Figma has really overtaken it in newsrooms?
Okay. I think my newsroom is both using Figma and still Illustrator, but it's used in different ways. Like for Figma, it's because it can, like if you have an account, you can have multiple person doing the job at the same time. So like for our project, because like we have this bunch of images and we have 3 colleagues have to like draw the path on it. So it's better that all of us, we're working at this, I think it's a panel or something. So like he can see like what we are he can see another people is doing this part and I am doing this part. So it's only for conveniency.
Okay.
You've now taken all this and probably done what the public doesn't know, and maybe even Taiwan doesn't know, and you've put it all out there and you can see it. What happened?
Okay, so for this topic, because we also, not only this article, we also have a series of articles. It's like we interview a lot of Japanese figures. Is actually the whole article set is about how Japan responds to Taiwan's situation. Yeah, so after this popular, I must say that I don't think a lot of Taiwanese people suddenly awakened to the situation, but they had a lot of message to us that this do improve their recognition of what is happening. Because I think people in Taiwan, they think like military things is actually very far away from them. Although it's like happening on a daily basis, but still like very far away and people don't know about it. So we did this in a very simple way to help them to know the situation now. And also for the impact, I think the most impact is like a lot of Japanese experts, they see these and they had a lot of discussions in their communities about how Japan's strategies, how Japan should act towards Taiwan's situation and something like that. Yeah.
Okay. I believe there's no more questions. You see, I have one, because I wanted Naveena to also speak about what is the response, what is the impact, because that was the question I was going to ask. It's important to, I think what gives journalists, satisfaction is when their work really makes the impact that they were going after, right? So what kind of response did you get from community, the company itself, even the government that was supposed to be doing this?
So the Federal Environmental Protection Agency wrote back to us and said, we are looking into this situation, we are aware of it. They didn't say very much, but it was a one-line response that said, we are aware and we're looking into it, essentially. And then we had a big response from the community because part of the project was also we distributed postcards to the zip codes that were immediately around that facility because those folks are the most impacted. And we were worried that they would not see our story on Grist's website. We had it co-published in the local newspaper and the Houston Chronicle, but we were still worried that they wouldn't come across the story through traditional news channels. And so we sent out postcards to, I believe it was about 3,000 households in that neighborhood. And so, and there was, contact information on that postcard. And so we got a lot of responses through that, either thanking us for the story, saying, yes, I've had all these health effects. I often smell sulfur dioxide in the air. There's that rotten egg smell. And so kind of sharing their experiences and asking for more information and things like that. So we got a lot of response from the community as a result.
Right. I think that's amazing how you take something from online to kind of create an offline engagement. I think that's quite innovative and, to go by. I'm going to take your question and I'll come. Okay, you're done. I want you guys to speak to how collaboration, I was thinking if you had almost 47 people, you wouldn't need any other person to get your job done. But in between, you were talking about how you still had to reach out.
Yeah.
How well can you leverage collaboration of either experts or other journalists or community of practice, and how well did that, help your work, and what do you think should be how, data journalism, I like to still say it's a new genre, should thrive in local communities?
Okay, for collaboration, I think like for every of our topic, we usually seek help from the expert first. Like we will interview experts and asking about how they think of the data. Do they know any sources that can like, do they know any data sources that is best for this topic or something? So they will give me advices. So like for this topic, it's like I think we, because we only got this source. This is what we already know, so we don't ask the experts, but after we finish the data processing, we ask the expert, and they told us like, we are actually asking some national defense experts, and they are in the official National Defense Department, but still they don't have a data set of this. So we kind of provide the data to them, and they are very like thankful, and they tell us like there are further things you can do with this data. And also for the reach out to the journalist community, I think this project is really about how we reach out to the welfare magazine. It's another group of data journalists. They are doing these topics before us, and so they are also in the Hack and Hackers Taipei Facebook group, and they always will share their methodology in the Facebook group. So we saw that, so we reached out for advice, and they generously tell us about how to do it with Figma or something like that. And then we enhance this methodology by adding these geographical parameters on it, and also we publish the methodology on the website so that other newsrooms can also learn from it.
Yeah, thank you. I guess that's something to take away, and one model that I've seen over time that data journalism has been increasing, thriving, because other newsrooms will share their methodology, even share the data to help kind of reinforce or resource the community or practice around it. So I'm going to come to you, and I'll take two questions altogether. First is the one on how did collaboration in any way help? And then the second one is, what would be your advice for, newsrooms, around the global south, and even the global north, and how well to use tools or even collaborative mechanisms to drive home, issues of, human rights, issues of, regulations or infractions of regulations.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of collaboration, there was the example that I provided in terms of audience engagement. Once the story had published, it was really important to make sure that the story reached the people who were most affected by that facility. And so we really thought about, how do we reach out? And so our audience engagement team came up with a Facebook a campaign to make sure that we were targeting certain Facebook groups and communities where we knew that people who lived in that neighborhood were active. So that was sort of one way in which we were reaching out. And then there's the postcards that I mentioned. So that was, post-publication. But prior to publication, in terms of the data itself, there was a small universe of people who were very familiar with that lawsuit and who had engaged very closely over the years as that litigation had progressed. And so once I recognized that there was some data here that I wanted to work with, there were multiple phone calls with those people because they were the only ones. It was such a narrow data set that they were the only ones who were really familiar with the case and understood what it was that I was looking at. So there were lots of conversations to understand, what do these fields mean? What should I expect here? How can I manipulate this data? And then once the analysis was complete and I felt like we had findings to share, went back to those same people to then ask them, well, you haven't seen this data in a spreadsheet and analyzed this way. So what do you think of the findings? Does this conclusion make sense to you? Could there be another explanation for why we're seeing this? So those kinds of conversations happened. And then I also reached out to a number of law professors who were looking at this data set and looking at the conclusions and trying to help me understand, well, what conclusions can we draw in terms of, are there specific statutes that were violated and so on. So there was constant communication with different kind of groups of sources before and after publication.
All right, thank you so much. I think this will be like the end of it. But the takeaway, I think for me, and I would believe for many people, will be how at every point in time you needed to use a resource. You were not thinking twice about it. I can see how, instead of using Adobe Illustrator, you were thinking of how to collaborate with other colleagues, and you would rather go for Figma, right? Or when you think, there wasn't any reason to be shy of using, ChatGPT, even though journalists think that this thing is going to take their job, but you can see how it can amplify, how it can help, answer the questions that were difficult for the eye to better understand. One question I would like to keep in the mind of everyone is, how will funding drive data journalism, or when you need to dig deeper? I mean, if I'd ask the resources that you needed to make all of this happen, right? I know there will be a different conversation, and that's one thing to say. If you wanted to start a new genre, whether it's data journalism, fact-checking, or as we start to think of frontier technologies, geojournalism, and the rest of them, who is going to fund it, or who is going to pay? I'm going to leave us with this thought and say thank you for coming. Thank you for the session. Enjoy the rest of your evening.